Hello everybody, my name is Houseplant Holly and I am the houseplant manager here at Sunnyside Nursery, and today we are going to be making terrariums. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about making your terrarium and then your kind of basic care. So we already upload this up on the website, so if you need to print this out, this is a good time to do it. And we will talk about step by step what materials you'll need, how much you'll need, and then your basic care throughout your terrarium's life cycle. So I recommend printing this up. All right, so before we delve into making the terrariums, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the difference between an open terrarium and a closed terrarium. So an open terrarium, let's snag this guy right here. Obviously it's open at the top. It allows fresh air to access the plants at all times. So your plants are going to grow at a normal rate as a standard potted plant. It's easier to kind of take care of. It will dry out faster than a closed system, but it will be easier to kind of maintain. You may need to do a little bit more pruning compared to a closed system, or possibly replanting, but this is definitely an easier kind of novice terrarium. So if you're just starting out, or if you've been doing them forever, this is a really great option. They're also great for gifts too, and they're easy for people to take care of. So that's an open terrarium. And then a closed terrarium system, like this little guy here, it's got a lid on it, so it's closed. And so these guys, they create their kind of their own ecosystem here. So from the water in the soil will evaporate and then produce condensation, which will precipitate rain or create this cloudy, fog on the glass. And that will come back down onto the plants, and then it's kind of a closed, ecosystem. So it doesn't really require a ton of maintenance. Every couple weeks, you will want to open the lid up to give it a little bit of a refresh, especially if the condensation has dissipated quite a bit or has left. That's a good time to indicate when it needs to be watered. So that's a little closed system. You really want to make sure that you're only planting plants that are really humid lovers, like tropical plants, orchids, moss, ferns, and that kind of thing. Succulents or cacti will definitely die in these systems, so please don't plant them in there. You will be disappointed. If you're wanting to do like a succulent or cactus terrarium, this is a really good option, the open system for those, because they can dry out. So that's some basic information for that. So now let's get to our project. Okay, so for a terrarium vessel, you'll want to use something that is translucent, could be glass or plastic. So you want that light to be able to hit the plant, and you also want to be able to see the plant. So we have a different varieties here of different sizes and some different additions. Like this is a piece of driftwood that I had bleached, kind of add some height and some drama to it. Right here we have a little bog garden with a little Venus flytrap. A lot of these you can just source from a local thrift shop or a florist, or they're really easy to find. You want to make sure that you do clean them very well before you're planting something in it, because you never know what kind of toxins or cleaning products that were used on it, or if somebody had like fish in one of these bowls at one point. You don't want any of that stuff to kind of transfer into your terrarium. And today we're going to be using our standard kind of bubble globe here, which is just a really good kind of starter terrarium to use. Let's talk about the terrarium layers. So we are going to be creating this kind of layered system in the terrarium. What we have here is kind of our first drainage layer. We have horticultural sand and we have pea gravel. Some people just like to do the pea gravel. They skip the horticultural sand, but I kind of like to double up on the drainage layer, and it also looks kind of neat when you do layer it and you can see the layers. This is activated charcoal. This helps absorb extra moisture. It also inhibits bacterial growth and odors. So this is a really important layer to add to your terrarium. And then we have a layer of moss. This is green moss. You can also use your kind of orchid sphagnum moss. So this helps protect the soil from getting into the drainage layer here. It also adds a little bit of a nice moisture barrier for your soil. And then we have potting soil here. If you're using foliage plants, you would want to do just a regular good potting soil. If you are going to plant up cacti or succulents, you'll want to use cactus and succulent soil. And then we have our top dressing kind of gravel rock here, which is an option, an optional addition that you want to do. Or you can add beach glass, you could add wood chips, whatever kind of aesthetic that you're going for. So this is our little lasagna system that we're going to be building today. So we have our clean terrarium vessel, our little bubble here. So first off, we're going to add our horticultural sand, which is about 1 inch to 2. We will be adding some pea gravel as well. Let's just kind of shake that a little bit, get that all nice and level. All right, now we're going to be adding some of our pea gravel. So this is a little bit dusty at the moment, but it will show some better color once it gets a little wet. Okay, so really creating that nice little drainage buffer. Okay, just pat. All right, so the next layer is going to be our activated charcoal, and again, this helps inhibit bacterial growth, which is usually a contributor to the smell. Like if you get a rotting smell, that is no bueno. Okay, all right, that's a good, nice inch layer of the activated charcoal. Pat that down. All right, so now we're going to add our moss layer, and this helps kind of block the soil from getting into that drainage layer, and then adds a little bit of moisture into that bottom layer of the soil as well. Doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to do the job. All right. And since we're planting up some foliage plants, we're going to be using some regular potting soil. Just going to start dumping that in. Right. And I did kind of pre-moisten this soil a little bit. I just sprayed it a little bit with the spray bottle, just so it's easier to work with, and you're not, putting your plants into a dry system and you have to like water a bunch. There we go. I'll do a little pat. Okay. So this is probably about 1 inch of soil or something. We just want to cover up that moss, and we'll be adding a little bit more soil to the top once we get our plants going in there. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so today we are going to be planting up. We have this cute little variegated peperomia, and we have our little Calicia pink panther. This is part of the Tradescantia family, super cute. And then we're going to put in a little carry-eye Hoya, which will always stay this shape because it's been propagated just to stay a leaf, so it won't get very big, so that'll be easy to maintain. Okay, so we're going to take off some of this old soil here off of the plant roots, and this feels a little dry as well. So I may just kind of spritz the roots a little bit, just again, so it's not going into a dry system. So I'm just going to kind of give her a little spritz. Okay, so we're going to kind of make a little area where we're going to plant this. This is a little bit tall, which is fine, as long as you're going to give it the height that it needs to grow. You can always prune it down a little bit if you would like. Typically, you don't want the plants to kind of press up against the glass, but it's okay if it just touches, you know, just slightly. Okay, now we have our little Hoya plant, some nice roots, and this actually has quite a bit of moisture in the soil, so I don't think I need to give her a spritz. Okay, so just kind of place that in there like so, and then we have our little pink panther. These are a little bit silly to deal with sometimes, but okay. It's going to probably be a little bit scraggly, but we can always fix that here in the end. Okay. So at least I kind of got a placement going on here. So one thing that I do recommend with making terrariums is this little kit here, these tools here. They're amazing. So I do recommend grabbing a set of these. These will also be a part of our terrarium sales. So I highly recommend picking those up because I use them all the time. So like this little guy, this little rake here, I use this to like pat around those plants because, you know, after a while you can get your hand in there. Okay, let's add a little more soil around those critters. Okay, a little in there. And don't worry, the tool also comes. The toolkit also comes with a little bit of a little brush, which will, you can kind of dust off all your plants after you've done making a mess in here. Okay. All right. Okay. Kind of feels pretty secure in there. Let's get our little rake out. Looks like we need a little bit more soil here in the back. Cover those roots up. Little tool in there. Okay. And these Calicias, they if they break apart or whatever, as long as they're still touching the soil, they will root up no problem. So it is kind of a nice thing since they are a little fragile, but they are pretty tenacious. Okay, so that is that. Yeah, so this little piece here, since that kind of broke off, if I just leave it there, it'll work itself out. Okay, all right, there's our little brush. And, you know, it's going to get a little bit of dirty on the inside, but that's all right. Now, if you wanted to add a top layer of rock, you know, or bark or whatever, that's always an option that you can do. With this one, I might add a little bit of rock, but it's going to get a little difficult to get around this guy. So I might do that off camera, and then I can show you the finished product. Okay, so I've added most of the top dressing already here to the front. And so I got a handful of rock here and just kind of pour it right in there. Try to cover up all of that soil. This will also help against your soil from drying out as fast as well. So that's something that you'll want to be mindful of. Okay. All right, and if you need to kind of, there we go, a little dusty, let's just dust you right off. And if you need to do a little bit more at the base there, that's totally fine. Okay, get out of there. Dust your little heart off. Do that. Okay, so here you go. You have your cute little terrarium. And so you can kind of see the layers that we have going on here. So you'll be able to see any sort of water build up. If you are overwatering, you would definitely be able to see it in these layers. And you can correct that pretty easily. If this is oversaturated with water, you can tip the system here and then let it pool, and then you can put a paper towel or something in here and you can kind of mop it up. But it's typically, you know, you don't really have that issue unless you are really heavy-handed with the watering. So for a system like this, I would definitely check it at least once a week. But usually it's like go up to 2 to 3 weeks without being watered. These plants that I have in here can go a little bit longer without watering, because the peperomias and the Hoyas and the Tradescantia family, the Calycias, they don't like to stay really wet. So definitely they can go a couple weeks probably and be fine. So I'm going to give this just a little bit of spritz, since we're going to just get a little bit of moisture in there. Get some on the sides too, kind of clean off a little bit of that dirt. And you don't want to oversaturate the plants too much, but being an open system, they are going to dry out a lot faster than in a closed system. So if you do a closed system, if the foliage stays too wet, they could rot. But you could just leave the lid off a little bit and it will dry out and you'll be all good. Okay, so this guy, I would recommend this would want to be in some bright indirect light. You don't want to put this in a windowsill where it's going to be getting a ton of direct light, because this glass is just going to singe these plants. So as long as it's in a bright spot, in a bright room, it will be totally happy. When you do have like your closed systems, typically you have your humid lovers, you'll have your like humid loving, more lower light plants in here, and they'll just do just fine in there. But give it a little refresh every couple weeks and you'll be good to go. Okay, a couple of the top dressings that we do sell, the decorative rock, we do have a black and a white and a red that you can use as a top dressing. I use the white on the terrarium that we built. I also think that the pea gravel and the horticultural sand can also look as a nice top dressing as well. And then also, if you do have some other sterile stones or shells, they would work just fine as a top dressing, or you know, as little decorative touches here. This is kind of what the pea gravel looks like. It has like a very nice kind of natural color. These are just some big stones we unfortunately don't sell, but if you have like a stone collection or rock collection that's sterile, that's awesome. You can always put a little bit of moss at the top. We do sell orchid bark, so if you're wanting to do like a really woodsy theme, you can kind of like combine these two. And then this is that white rock that I use in the terrarium. Let me just touch base a little bit more about the watering for your terrarium. Since there is nowhere for the water to escape, so there's no drainage hole, everything is contained in these layers, so you don't want to overdo it, but you want to still give your plants still adequate moisture in there for them to be healthy and happy. So on the list, on the making of the terrarium sheet that was provided, I did recommend either like a spray bottle that has a really coarse stream on it, which can like get down and penetrate the gravel, or a syringe or a straw, or a narrow watering can here. So you can really get into your little plants here and water. So I'm just going to ever so slightly give a little bit of water to these guys, not overdo it, because again, these guys don't like to stay super moist, but you know, we want to make sure. And then I like to kind of just give a little bit of moisture around all of the soil, so it's not having pockets of wet and dry in there. So again, you'll want to check your watering at least weekly, depending on the plants that you have, where it's located in your home. If it's near a heater or if it's near air conditioning, it's definitely going to dry out faster. So that's definitely something you want to be aware of. And then if you're like wondering like, how do I check, you know, the moisture, you can always kind of bury your finger down in here a little bit and check the moisture around your plants. Also, if you are noticing a lot of moisture in your soil and everything too, you're probably fine. If your plants are starting to wilt and you did check the soil and it's dry, then your plants are really thirsty. Now, if your plants are starting to wilt and your soil is very moist, then they're probably being overwatered, and then you'll want to try to probably wick some of that moisture out of there, because that will entail just begin to rot, and you don't want to do that to your system, obviously, and you don't want to kill your plants. So definitely that's a couple of the watering tips that I recommend for these guys. Okay, so I wanted to show you what happens when your terrarium gets a little overgrown. So this was planted up a long time ago, many months ago, and it just kind of obviously flourished, which is great, but everything's kind of competing for space here. So we have this asphyxia, it's kind of related to the African violet. We have a purple waffle plant in here, or this is actually the Snow Queen waffle plant, and then we have this Schefflera. So what you would want to do is, you know, this is very root bound. You can see how all of these roots have kind of taken over, and they would probably be pretty happy if they were planted on their own now. So what I would recommend is gently removing all of these plants out of here and then potting them up in just, you know, your typical potting soil. And then some of this probably can be salvaged, like some of your rock, you may want to like clean it really well. But the soil, if there's too much root debris in it, you'll probably maybe, you know, put that in your compost, or you can use it outside or something like that. The moss might, I think, again, that could go in your compost. But your sand and your rock, possibly the charcoal can still be reused. And then also one of the things I wanted to touch base on is if you're seeing any like dead debris or dead flowers or anything like that, you want to make sure that you're removing them, because that can want to grow mold, and you don't want to introduce that into your system, like mold and bacteria and everything like that. So one of those tips is for sure to keep track on your just daily maintenance on your plant health there. Okay, so all the materials that we use today, we do carry here at Sunnyside Nursery. We will have all of this in our houseplants department. So we have our horticultural sand, our pea gravel, and our activated charcoal here. And then we also have the green moss that we used. We also have the other orchid sphagnum moss here that you can use. It's kind of this blonde color. This is what you typically use for propagation, or as moss around orchids and things like that. And then we also have some reindeer moss, which is more of a decorative moss. It's really fun and like kind of spongy. And then we also have our potting soil. So we have our regular potting soil, and we have our cactus mix potting soil in smaller bags, so you're not having to get a huge bag that we have kind of in our retail section. I also have these cute little tools that I mentioned earlier. I do highly recommend these. These will be a part of our sale, like I said. So our tools will be 20% off. Our kits, which I'll go over here in a second, will be 20% off. And then our little 2-inch plants will be 20% off. And we'll have plenty of like our foliage plants, some that can be used in closed systems as well. And then also some little succulents that you can use, or the arid terrarium. So let me talk about our little kit real quick. Okay, so our little kits will include our little bubble here, the same exact one that I planted up earlier today. Give you some instructions here, just another printout, because you know some people don't have a printer nowadays. We do include a little baggie of the horticultural sand and the pea gravel for that main drainage layer. And then you'll have a little baggie of that activated charcoal and your moss, a little bit of moss, and then some soil. So this is just the regular potting soil. If you're wanting to do a succulent soil instead, we can definitely do that. If you're wanting to do any sort of like top dressing, that's sold separately because everyone has their own preference. But this is what you can get in our little kit. And again, these are $29.99, but then it's going to be 20% off with our sale. Thank you for joining me, Houseplant Holly, on making our terrariums today. If you want to reserve a kit, please email us at sunnysidenursery@msn.com, and then we can get one of these little beauties all wrapped up for you. If you do want to specify your potting soil, if you want regular potting soil or succulent soil, please let us know also in that email, and then we can get that out towards you. It will also come with this little print up too. And again, just wanted to touch base on our sale. It runs from Saturday, October 2nd to Friday, October 8th. And again, the kits, the tools, and the 2-inch plants will be 20% off. So that's great savings for you. So hopefully we'll see you in, and have a great day. Thanks.